Hey everybody, this one's on do-it-yourself dealing with student loans. Some people contacted me and wanted to know, and so I thought that's a good topic for a video. There's a book called Modern Money Mechanics. It's a 40-page document published by the Chicago Federal Reserve in the 1960s. This is the cover. Notice Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago in the bottom right-hand corner. It was published in May of 1961, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. So we're going to zoom in on some of this stuff. It says the highlighted area says the money creation process takes place principally through transaction accounts. The money creation process. And this is the text right here. It's on page 2. And then this is on page 6. And it says if business is active, the banks with excess reserves probably will have opportunities to loan the $9,000. Okay, it's going through a scenario. And of course, they do not really pay out loans from the money they receive as deposits. If they did this, no additional money would be created. What they do when they make loans is to accept promissory notes in exchange for credits to the borrower's transaction account. And this is on page 6, and this is the text. The point being is that and this is actually found in the Bank Act. It's Title 12, United States Code, Section 83. And the banks cannot loan their own capital stock. And the point being is that when anybody makes a deposit under the Uniform Commercial Code, it becomes the bank's property. It's an unsecured debt to the bank. That's why the CDOs that were responsible for the subprime crisis, or so-called crisis, are such a scam because they take priority over bank deposits, and nothing was ever loaned. But so the bottom line is that banks do not loan anything. There is no such thing as a bank loan in America or anywhere. When you sign the promissory note, you create the money. They deposit the promissory note into a transaction account, and based on that deposit, they cut a check. Tom Schaff wrote a book called Banker's Secrets, and it lists 160 questions that you can ask a CPA and an officer of the bank in court to prove that they loaned nothing. And this is Tiernan versus Jackson, an 1831 court case. The case of Farmer versus Russell, so far as the point before us is concerned, asserts that the principle that if A receives money from B to pay C, it is money had and received for the use of the latter. In such a case, it is immaterial whether the promise to pay over be express or implied. For by the very act of receipt, the party holds it not for A, but in trust for C. And so it creates a trust. And this is Crunk versus State Farm Casualty. And it talks about a cashier's check. Differs from that. A cashier's check differs in that it is a bill of exchange drawn by the bank upon itself and is accepted by the act of issuance. A cashier's check is the primary obligation of the remitting bank. And so an ordinary check is considered as merely a promise to pay, but a cashier's check is regarded substantially as money which it represents. The gift of such a check is completed upon delivery of the check. And then see, this is several sites here, which, and then it says, see also Scott versus Seaboard SEC Company, security company. Which quoted with approval extensively from Drinkall, and then quoted from Hathaway versus Delaware County as follows. And then the site is that by reason of the peculiar character of cashier's checks and their general use in the commercial world, they were to be regarded substantially as the money which they represented. And that's a cashier's check. And this is a Canadian case that basically it explains it even further. And it says, what is said to be an unconditional promise to pay a certain sum of money is itself money. The words on the face of the paper will pay to the bearer on demand cannot alter its character as money and turn it into a different document which calls for the payment of money. And that's Bank of Canada versus Bank of Montreal, Supreme Court of Canada. And so the point being is that when you sign the promissory note, it is money. You create the money. Tiernan versus Jackson is over a shipment of tobacco. Crunk versus State Farm Fire and Casualty is over an insurance policy. Bank of Canada versus Bank of Montreal is again, that's the banksters. The Tiernan case talks about it being a chose in action. And here's the Tiernan case again. They are either cases where there was an express promise to hold the money subject to the order of the principal, or there was an implied promise to pay it over as it was received to the use of the particular person. In the case at bar, no such irresistible presumptions exist. And so a chosen action is a thing, whether tangible or intangible, a person's article, a personal article, a chattel, a chose, that's a chose. Now, a chosen action is a proprietary right in personam, such as a debt owed by another person, a share in a joint stock company, or a claim for damages in tort. The right to bring an action to recover a debt, money, or thing, personal property that one person owns but another person possesses, the owner being able to regain possession through a lawsuit. And that's what a chosen action is. And so that's what money is. So it's real money. I should say banknotes or the promissory note. So the bottom line is that banks do not loan anything. There are no bank loans. All bank loans are a fraud. All mortgages are a fraud. The so-called federal debt is a fraud. There is no government debt. All foreclosures are a fraud. The so-called subprime crisis was a fraud. See Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3. The banksters are thieves. The U.S. Congress is bought and paid for by the bankster thieves. All so-called courts are bought and paid for by the bankster thieves. They operate exclusively under the Uniform Commercial Code. That's all coming from the United Nations through the unconstitutional Unidroit Treaty. And now we'll get into the issue of student debt. Okay, a student loan. It's an alleged student loan, first of all. Now, one thing I want to say is that all of this stuff can be used with any debt, really. Now, especially a student loan. A student loan is an unsecured debt, although it is guaranteed by the government. It is still an unsecured debt, and in a worst case scenario, what happens is, in the case of a student loan, the IRS collects the debt, and they do it through the tax return. And so an alleged debtor is a U.S. citizen and has a Social Security number, but a U.S. citizen's assessed to K trust, and all of that falls under Roman law and the Roman cult, and the Commerce Clause, too, I might add. Every taxpayer is assessed to K trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's Henry Boland's 1912. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive Sestake Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of U.S. and U.S. Inc. And that's a summary of 5 pages of the congressional record on June 13th, 1967. So the point being is that a U.S. citizen is a Sestake Trust. Okay, so are you a U.S. citizen? The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. And the only absolute right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. The point being is a U.S. citizen doesn't have any rights. A U.S. citizen's a slave. I've got YouTube videos about that. U.S. citizen's an enemy of the state. I mean, why on earth would you want to be a U.S. citizen? You have to understand the nature of what's going on before you can take steps to deal with it. And so, as far as the student loan is concerned, it's always a U.S. citizen. And, you know, it's always a fiction. It doesn't exist. And so now I've got a little advertisement here. Announcing a subscription-based YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. The recommended cost of the subscription is currently at $1.99 a month because it avoids the advertising only. Originally, when I started setting this up, I was thinking that I was going to be able to put some exclusive material on the channel, but you know, after thinking about it, the only power that the New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it all for all of our benefit. And so I can't think of anything that I want to have on there exclusively. I mean, I may come up with something that I'd want to have exclusively, but at this point I can't. But I'm currently publishing 5 videos a week, and you won't get the advertising. And if you want to make a donation, that's a good way of doing it. A bunch of people making a small donation, it can add up. And so I could use the donations. So anyway, so that's the little advertisement, and we'll go back to the topic at hand. A U.S. citizen is a slave. For more information, watch the U.S. citizen is a slave video, and the Social Security number equals a badge of slavery video, and the do-it-yourself how to get compensation for labor video, and all wars or commercial transactions video, and the U.S. citizen is an enemy of the state video. And the United States is owned and operated by the Roman cult video. All of those videos will further substantiate the statements that I'm making about the fact that a U.S. citizen's a slave, has no rights, and when you signed that so-called loan, you created the money. So, what's going to happen? Well, first of all, they're going to do their little standard collection process, right? And so it's going to be harassment, it's going to be phone calls, it's going to be letters, it's going to be threats, it'll be negative information in the credit report, and eventually they may send a demand letter. Now, I'm not sure if they'll send a demand letter because this is a government guaranteed loan. I don't know. Their procedures might be a little bit different from a standard debt, but with a standard debt, they'd certainly send a demand letter. And it's from liars. I meant lawyers. No, actually, I meant liars. Anyways, in that demand letter, they demand payment in full or they'll file a lawsuit. Well, shoot, that's perfect. Anyways, I'll tell you why it's perfect here in a minute. But anyways, so even if you lose the lawsuit, there's a judgment. It'll be in place for 7 years. And then there's the potential of seizures. But again, they can only seize things that are owned by the Satanic Trust. And you have to understand that. And if you set yourself up properly, well, I mean, I don't know about you, but the Satanic Trust that is associated with my name doesn't own anything. And so anyways, so the bottom line is that it'll be coming from liars, okay? And all liars are bar members, and all liars are bail priests. And this is Book 7, Corpus Juris Secundum, Section 4, on attorneys. And he is, however, in a sense, an officer of the state with an obligation to the court. And his first duty is to the courts and the public, not the client. Whenever his duties to his client conflict with those as an officer of the court in the administration of justice, the former must yield to the latter. And so he's bought and paid for, and it's not by the client. Clients are also called wards of the court, and a ward of the court is an imbecile. And a ward of the court is an infant or person of unsound mind. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. A ward of the court's an imbecile. A ward of the court is not competent. Everything is about competence and incompetence. That's why they are representing you, because you're not competent to make decisions for yourself. Therefore, the attorney is going to make the decisions for you. There's no such thing as an incompetent sovereign. Do you know who you are? And think about it. When the bar member sends you a letter, any bar member, I don't care who he is, they're representing you. They're accusing you of being an imbecile. Think about it. That's exactly what they're doing. They're representing you and they're accusing you of being an imbecile. So, you're going to take that standing up? Sitting down? Anyways, another advertisement about other videos that I have that are available to watch that I would highly encourage you to watch to further educate yourself. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, directly related to this particular video, Churchianity series. And that one actually, to some extent, is related too, because it talks about the Roman cult. Bankrupt corporate so-called governments, directly related to this video. Bar members 1, 2, and 3, directly related to this video. Do it yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service. Martial laws here, directly related to this video. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, no sales tax. Do it yourself, traffic stop 1 and 2. Do it yourself, free mail. Do it yourself, kangaroo courts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. So you have some alternatives, and we'll talk about each alternative. The alternative number 1 is the demand letter, okay? When they send you that demand letter, think about it. It's coming from liars, okay? And remember, they're officers of the court. You can break it off in their butt for, I want to say something else, but you break it off in their butt is what you'll do if you do this, okay? You say you send them back a registered letter, and you say, sure, no problem, you can sue me, but I intend to prove that you did not loan anything. I intend to call an officer of the bank and a CPA on the stand and ask them to question the enclosed 160 questions for bankers and prove that you did not loan me anything. And if you actually did loan me a depositor's money, please have an officer of the bank sign the enclosed affidavit, and I'll reconsider my position. And I got to tell you, when I did this, after about 3 months, I got a letter back showing that the account had been paid off. It's a magical thing. Now, so it has to be from liars. You got to get that demand letter from the liars. And you got to send it back by registered mail because you got proof of service. And they must be threatening lawsuit and demanding payment in full. Now, when you just tell them that they didn't loan you anything, I mean, the bail priest, clerk masquerading as a judge, that won't impress them. Okay, but when you offer them a way out, okay, send them an affidavit, basically a straightforward affidavit that an officer of the bank signs that says, all it has to say is that they loaned you a depositor's money, which, by the way, is a felony. Anyways, when you send them that, it gives them an out. They have an opportunity to resolve this matter if they did actually loan a depositor's money. Of course, they didn't. But the bottom line is that if they continue with their lawsuit or continue with doing anything, what'll happen is they'll get disbarred because they're officers of the court and they're supposed to be interested in, they'll be viewed as abusing the system. I'm serious. They'll get disbarred. And so they're not going to want to go there. And even though they are representing the liars, the banksters, they also have a fiduciary duty to their wallet. Anyways, so they'll get disbarred if they proceed. So that's alternative 1. Alternative 2 is use the Dissolve Your Debt Manual. It uses accepted for value procedures. It's available on my Yahoo group in the files directory. And this could also be used with the demand letter. And I've used it, and other people I know have used it successfully. Okay? And so I can tell you that it does work. Now, it doesn't necessarily, you got to understand you're dealing with thieves, okay? And so some of them, some people, some of them will actually come back with a statement showing that it's been paid. But and some of them will send you another bill, okay? And what they're essentially doing is they're wanting you to pay it twice. And so I used it with the bankster thieves. So alternative 3. Let's go there in a minute. I used it with the bankster thieves and with $45,000 worth of credit card debt, and they kept harassing me. And so I sent them a registered letter, and it was 4 pages, real short and sweet. And I basically went through how I'd done that, and how they didn't loan me anything, and how they had collateralized the application with a QSIP number, and how they'd been paid several times. And then I ended with that. Basically, I told them that either you have 2 choices. You could either zero out the account. See, my problem was, and they told me, I found out afterwards, I shouldn't have done it that way. I wanted to pay the whole thing off, and I should have just sent a partial payment. Anyways, they came. I told them that either you can zero out the account and I'll run it up again, or you can close the account. And that was the mistake, because they went ahead and closed the account, and they still harassed me. But one of the things I told them is that if you damage the Satanic Trust's credit report, then I'll sue you for fraud, extortion, a bunch of things. And I also told them, I said, if you want to go to the Supreme Court's website and do a search for my name there, you'll see that I've been there 4 times. And so don't think that I don't have the ability to do something about this. And I said, and then also, I don't want to hear from one of your lying, thieving, murdering bar member lawyers. And so anyways, they did all of that, okay? They didn't damage the credit report. They kept harassing me, but I just threw that stuff in the garbage. They didn't damage the credit report, and it went away. Anyways, I also dissolved about $160,000 worth of alleged IRS debt. And anyways, so I know it works. I know people that were using that thing for years, okay? Using it for utility bills, using it for taxes, using it for all sorts of stuff. My attitude is, the only reason I used it is because I was basically between a rock and a hard place. And I'd been out of work. I didn't have any money coming in. And I had to do something, and I didn't see any other choice. But my attitude also is that if there's any other way, I wouldn't do it, because you basically sign for the straw man, okay, for the Satanic Trust. And I'm not. My attitude is that thing is a fraud, and it doesn't exist, and that's my position, okay? I only used it because I absolutely had to. If you do not file income tax returns, then alternative 3, okay? So this is alternative 3. If you do not file income tax return, then there's no remedy for them, okay? And if you quit filing, then you can expect to get a request to file from the IRS. And as far as how to deal with that and what to expect, watch my do-it-yourself no income tax video. You can also expect liars will try to steal your wages, okay? And watch the do-it-yourself how to get compensation for labor video. And you can also expect the liars will try to steal any property that is owned by the Satanic Trust. And in that case, watch the do-it-yourself property in the Satanic Trust video. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administering Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. And this last paragraph is for all the Satanist order follower revenue officers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966. They can put their privileges and benefits up their rectal orifice. Donations to support this work, I appreciate it, but I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal, guest checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. The My contact information is my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. I got 2 YouTube profiles, Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page, I deleted it because of censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group at Sovereignty International at Facebook is being deleted. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. You can use the procedures talked about in here for any alleged debt. The secured debts are going to be a problem because they may still steal your property. If you do the dissolve your debt manual, then you might be able to get rid of that too. But unsecured debt, you can use this for any unsecured debt. And you have to understand, I've been sued, and I mean, if there's nothing for them to steal, it doesn't mean a hill of beans. And so again, you have to understand, what's going on and how to protect yourself. And so, that's essentially what you have to do. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. I hope you get something out of it. I hope you protect yourself. I know there's a lot of people. There's a big scam about these student loans. So there's a lot of people that are basically in slavery because of it. And it's not impossible to deal with. Okay, there's ways of dealing with that, and all of the stuff we talked about today. And send me your success stories, and I'll publish them in my blog. Have a great day.